So please welcome Inna Segal to the show. Welcome, Inna.
Thank you for having me, Ashley.
You're so welcome, all the way from Brisbane, Australia. Another soul sister in Australia. I have a few, and I appreciate the time difference and understanding that it's 8 a.m. there and 2 p.m. here, and it's just amazing the connection. And when I learn about someone like you and what you've gone on in your journey of life and what you really, your soul chose to come here to learn and to teach now, is so fascinating to me. But I've always been somebody, I grew up with mind over matter. My mom always mind over matter, had healing practitioners versus doctors. Like that was how I was raised. So I know I had that in me because when even raising the girls, we've always been, speak the wellness. We don't speak
Mm.
sickness. Not that I throw things under the rug, but I have taught them in their childhood that we speak wellness, and that's what it radiates through your energy, and that's where you're going to keep healing yourself. So I'm there with you. So then I start learning about you and your books and your magic and understanding that the way I look at life and understanding that we do choose our lessons in this life to, there's no mistakes, there's no accidents, there's no wrong turns. Everything is perfect. And we're all on this journey to expand our soul. So for you, let's start with, I know everything. Why don't we start? I'm not going to even say where I feel like you started uncovering your magic. So start, you tell me where you started uncovering your magic.
So beautiful. I think that for me, it was through creativity. And I hear stories from my mom, actually, even that when I was, where I don't fully have memory of this, but when I was, maybe 3 or 4, and I do have memories of when I was 1, but not, again, not all of the things. And she would say that I would invite the neighbors' children over and I would dress up in her clothes and perform. And I really feel like for me, that was a theme for quite a while in my younger years where I just needed creativity in my life. I literally felt, I'm going to say, like I couldn't breathe if I wasn't somehow involved in it, and it gave me that life force. So I would, even though I actually grew up more with the medical system rather than the alternative, because I just don't think it was really available, and my mom didn't really, that wasn't kind of the direction she went into. I actually didn't even know until I was, I don't know, later, maybe 18 or 19, that my great grandmother was a clairvoyant. I think it was not, I don't know, it wasn't really clear, and that she essentially kind of told my grandmother about her future and what was going to happen to her, mainly because she knew the war was coming, and that she wouldn't survive. So my grandmother grew up with that preparation, but I think because my grandmother was so traumatized in, through the war and losing actually everybody except her father in her family, it was something she didn't bring up until, I think, until she started talking to me about it. So it was really kind of an interesting, I guess my magic was always from, I knew that kind of being guided, almost spiritually, was through my exploring my inner self through that, through the arts, through writing. For me it was that.
So there's something when you were 11 and then it goes to when you were 20. Do you, can you
Yeah, so
remember
when
what?
I
Yeah.
was actually almost 11, 10 and a half, we came when we so I was born in Eastern Europe, and um we came to Australia, and between Australia, we went to Italy, and I had this insane love of Italy. It was like, it was my kind of creative, I guess, an expressive state, country, I should say. And when I came to Australia, I didn't actually know one word of English, which was the same when I went to Italy, but somehow that language, the poetic aspects of it just really spoke to me. And when I came to Australia, I found that people here were very, very different to people in Europe. That, if you were from the wrong place, you would start getting bullied, essentially. Well, that's what it was. And so I was bullied at school for being different, for not being able to speak English. And at around 11, when you mentioned, I started getting psoriasis all over my skin. And it wasn't like I couldn't, well, I didn't know how to connect things, but it was something that ran in my family. So I kind of took it as, well, it's genetics or it's this and that. And then around 15, I started getting really bad back pain. I'd always had issues with my digestive system. And I actually think from everything that I've looked at, every single person in my family does. So to me, digestive system is about kind of acknowledging your experience and assimilating it. And because my grandparents, I really feel it comes from that, didn't, because of the trauma they both experienced, it kind of became a challenge in our family. And when I was 18, I met my husband at the time, and he was very open to alternative medicine. So this is kind of how I started exploring it. And I met him in an acting class, like I thought I probably
Oh,
would. And he started, kind of guiding me towards everything from, I mean, we went to chiropractor, but it was kind of more alternative, working on the nervous system kind of chiropractic. So it wasn't really kind of, pushing anything. It was
cracking.
just
Yeah.
allowing the body to heal. We went to kinesiology, went to rolfing, we went to probably many, many other things, that lots of healers that I can't necessarily remember. But the challenge was that I was actually showing up with the attitude like I had grown up with, which was, here's the doctor or the medical professional or the professional, alternative healing professional. I don't have to do anything. And I just show up and I lie on the, on the
Right.
table, and they fix me. And I think that at that time, 25 years ago, people just, they wouldn't necessarily say, hey, you need to be involved in this. It was much more like, well, you come and we just adjust or help you. But what would happen is that I wouldn't hold it. Like my body just couldn't hold the healing or the transformation. So because I couldn't hold it because of my own attitude, I would go backwards, and I would then potentially even get worse. And so this was just going on and on and on. And then I had a pretty kind of traumatic, life altering experience where I got pregnant and I didn't know what to do. I was so young, I was 19. And it took a lot of kind of sessions with different people for me to go, okay, fine. All right, I'm going to go and have this baby, because I wasn't the kind of person, out of all my friends who they thought would have a child young, I'd
Hmm.
always said, after 30, I can't even, I want to travel, I want to go to the US. No, I want to do acting. I'm not doing, children. And so because it happened, as you said, life, there's no accidents. And I went through the process and I was really kind of accepting. But then when I was, I don't know, it was coming to 8.5 months, something just started feeling wrong for me. Something was off. And I started to, I spoke to the midwife about it, and she was like, yeah, well, no, you're wrong. It's how it happens. Just chill, relax, calm down. Well, I was right. The baby died. Probably a couple of days before I gave birth, which was my birthday. So I became suicidal. I became so insanely depressed. And and so when I was seeing different people, I just felt like I was the victim, and what was the point of life? And my pain just exploded in my body even more because of how I was feeling. And so we had this moment with this chiropractor, because I'd been seeing him about 3 times a week for over a year, I think at that time, something like that. And I think he knew that something needed to change in my own attitude, but maybe he didn't really know exactly how to say it to me. He was pretty young at the time as well. And so I came into his office. I was in agony. My back was just fully twisted and inflamed. And he just looked at me and he said, your body's stuck. And I was like, yeah, that part, what are you going to do? And he kind of went, well, it wants to be stuck. And that really hit me. It wants to be stuck. There's nothing I can do. Go home. And on the way home, it was really interesting for me because I had been studying. By that stage, I'd gone to university and I had been studying professional writing and things like that, and literature. And part of it was that we were studying linguistics. You had to learn linguistics. And in my mind, I was like, well, is he saying that my body has a language? Because that's where my mind was focused, but I
Mm.
don't know this language. And so it's speaking Japanese to me or Chinese or some other, like I can't even read the letters, let alone understand what it's saying. And so then on the way, as I got home, I felt charged in a sense of aligned, and I was like, I'm gonna heal myself. This is it. Obviously, no one can help me because I'm not helping myself. So I'm gonna heal myself. And it really started by me starting to become conscious of my body, because most of us are not in our bodies. We're kind of in the doing mode, running around outside. And so it occurred to me just to place my hands on my back, to hold my back. And later on, I understood that the nervous system starts connecting to that area. And so you start having energy flow there. And from there, I realized I wasn't breathing. Like I said, I only breathed when I was in my acting classes. Otherwise, I held my breath. And
Oh,
so it was really interesting. So I started breathing and I was breathing deeply. It was painful, I'm not going to lie, to do it. But I could feel the expansion of the pain. And I thought, okay, well, something's going on. It then occurred to me, well, I was counting backwards from 30 because I was very negative. I had this skeptical, negative mind. And then it occurred to me to go, is there anything divine out there? And this was not an easy one, actually, because I didn't know if I could believe in God after I lost this child, because in my young mind, I associated, well, I trusted God that everything's going to be okay. And it wasn't. So I don't know how to believe in this now. And so I kind of said, okay, well, if there is anything divine out there, help me now. That was basically my prayer. And I literally thought nothing would happen, but this warmth started pouring into my body. And I had my eyes closed and I could see this gold light. And I thought to myself, okay, right, interesting, something's happening. And then this thought came out of nowhere and it said, I want to see my back. Again, I thought nothing was going to happen, but there was this feeling like the light switch just went on in my head, and I started all of a sudden having this clear vision of my spine, like I had X-ray vision, like when you go to an X-ray. That's what it looked like to me at that time.
wow.
And from a place, and I think it was really the first time in that kind of experience of health, I'm going to say, I started asking questions which were, why do I have this? But not as a victim. I actually really, really wanted to know. And my inner being started showing me, um, it was like very visual. I realized I was a very visual person. Images of, being bullied at school. And so I could see all of this. Uh, and how it was related to psoriasis. And then I could see how when I went to high school, I was bullied for very different reason. It wasn't so much for not speaking English. It was for because I went to private school, for not having the money and the success that the people that were at the school grew up with, because my parents were given huge discounts for their school. And so there was this other experience still of bullying, but in a different way, which I realized that all my friends were going through. In some ways, we all had issues with our spines, and we were all told that we couldn't do what we wanted to do in different ways. So it was quite a challenge, because I also felt like I couldn't speak to my parents about it. It was just not something they could understand in terms of what they were going through themselves. And and then the whole digestive issue was all to do with loss, coming from my grandmother meets my own, because I couldn't eat hardly any food when it started happening. And so I had all these realizations, and I cried and I felt through it, and I fell asleep. And I could feel the unwinding during the sleep. Like I had been wound up for most of my life, and now something's unwinding in my body. And so when I woke up the next day, I still had pain, but it was like 70% less pain, which was pretty huge for me, that I could do it, that I could, take myself to that experience. And because I was still very skeptical, I thought to myself, all right, let's keep working with this, because I don't want it to go back. But I am very interested and curious to actually discover more and see where this takes me. So this was kind of my journey into this healing.
Kind of, right? Good word. But there's things that you started to just like you would see people and there would be like a cartoon where you'd see their liver or
Yeah.
something. Like go to that place because then you started
Yeah.
seeing people and
Yeah, well, because I didn't know that it was just me, right? I mean, I thought this is just me. And then a few weeks later, I had at that time, my husband's friend over, and she was into writing. So we're actually sitting by the computer, and I was showing her my writing for my course and asking for her help. And then all of a sudden, as I'm typing, I look over at her, and I see this cartoon looking liver over her head, and I'd never seen anything like it before. And I'm just blinking and blinking. And she said to me, "Do you have something in your eye?" And I was like, "No, but can I ask you something so strange and weird?" And she said, "Sure." And I said to her, "Do you have liver problems?" And she said, "Yes." "Oh my God, how do you know?" "I've had them my whole life." It was fascinating for me because the image changed immediately, and I could see her grandfather. And I just had a knowing, that it was her grandfather. And I said, did your grandfather have the same issue? And she said, yes. And I said, well, was he in a concentration camp? And she said, yes. And I said to her, do you get nightmares connected to, what he went through? And she said, yeah. "Oh my God, how do you know?" And then I said this thing. I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything about the body because I never studied it. And I said, I think the issue you do have is coming through your DNA. It's a somehow, your DNA has been affected. And she had tests done 2 years later, because they didn't have those types of tests before. And that's what she was told. But then, I told her all this very, very personal stuff that she didn't know about her grandfather. And she called her mother, sorry, about her grandparents, her family, everything that she just didn't know. So she called her mother, and her mother said, "Yeah, all of that was true." So we then sat there staring at each other, and I was like, "I don't know who's more shocked. I think it's me, because I think you're more open to this stuff, and
right.
for me, it's much more new."
Wow. Explain. So let's go there with because you talk about the right side and the left side and how
Yeah,
you talk about the different organs and what they represent.
yeah,
Is that a good place how to
yeah,
explain to
yeah, yeah. It's
people?
great.
Okay.
Well, I just realized that there is kind of the wisdom of the body meets the soul, because we can't just say it's the body by itself, because the body has a soul that's embodying it and has consciousness. So, really the wisdom comes from both. And the soul, kind of gives you the symbolic meaning and the understanding, whereas the body, when you connect with it, gives you the understanding of the function. And so I try to connect both together, where I look at the function. Let's take the thyroid and and the throat area that a lot of people have issues with as they get older. And so I would look at it and I would go, well, what's the function of these parts of your body? So, the throat is about communication, and, the thyroid kind of helps us with hormonal balance and digestion in different ways, and stimulation. Like, it has so many functions in terms of our metabolism, all of this stuff. And our immune system and everything is actually interconnected. And I was, looking at that and going, well, what makes it break down? And it makes, how do we, what do we need to do that we're not doing? And it was so much around how we communicate, and whether, with the thyroid, it's really interesting. It's also whether we allow ourselves to dream, whether we allow ourselves to follow that internal guidance system that we have, what's right for me, or whether we ignore it and push it away and go, I'm just going to do what my parents said, or what's going to make me money. What's going to make me the most money is what I'm going to do, right? And and then the throat area as well, which is obviously in a similar kind of part of your body. What's that about? Well, it's our voice, it's our ability to express. And a lot of people I was hearing at the time when I was exploring this were saying, just tell your truth. And I agree with that to a point, but you've got to tell your truth in a way that somebody else can hear you, right? You've got to tell your truth in a way where you're more likely to get a good response rather than a bad response, because the more you get kind of slapped and you get bad responses, the more you're not going to tell your truth, because it hurts, because
Right.
you're rejected, you're attacked. And so I really felt that people didn't really know how to do that. I didn't know how to do that either. And so, yeah, it was like, well, okay, if the throat is about communication, how do we connect all the pieces? And so I started going, well, actually, we need to connect with our third eye, which is our depth of vision and our kind of tuning into a person and going, who is, let's say I'm speaking to you, Ashley, who is Ashley? What does she believe? What can I share with her that, that we're going to have a beautiful conversation, as opposed to somebody who is completely new at it, has never heard anything like what I'm saying. I might share it in a slightly different way with them, because again, I'm not trying to share it to be attacked. I'm trying to share, I'm trying to communicate to be understood, to help somebody open their mind or connect. And so then I went, well, it's the thinking part. So I have to think about it, but I also have to connect to my heart. And I need to go, how do I feel about it, especially when it comes to our family, right? How do I feel about this person? Let me, maybe I'm tired and it's your child, right? Your teenager that comes to you and you're like, oh my God, again, this is what they want to tell me. And you kind of need to slow down and soften your heart, right? So that you can communicate with them and hear them and they feel heard. And, you have this, you develop this really beautiful experience of communication, which I think is one of the most challenging things for humanity. And
Mhm.
so I went, otherwise we would have no war because we would know how to communicate,
Right.
right? And so I started going, okay, what's the wisdom? What is the function of each part of the body? But what is the wisdom of each part of the body? And so I'd come back to the heart and I would go, well, the heart, we know this. It's about intimacy, it's about relationships, it's about purpose, because we would say my heart's in it or my heart's not in it, or I love this person, I feel it in my heart. Most people didn't say I feel it in my head. So I kind of went,
Right.
well, that makes sense, and and I would look at why do we have so many health issues around like heart problems? What are
Mhm.
people not doing? And so I'd go, okay, let's break down the wisdom of the heart, or what are they doing? And of course the medical system will always say, well, it's the food, or it's stress, or we just don't know. That's the
Right.
usual answers to everything. And so I was like, well, no, there's so much more to it. There's so much more wisdom in the heart. It's like, if we were rejected and often earlier on in our lives, we're going to go into self-protection, right? And the self-protection creates hardening. And this is where the hardening of arteries come from, because we harden and we harden not just because we eat bad food, because there's plenty of people who eat bad food and live a long life, right?
Right.
We harden so much. Again, I'm all for good food. I'm not encouraging anyone to go and eat bad food, but you know it's like we harden because we self-protect, and each part of the body kind of gives us the wisdom, and then there's emotions that come in. And one of the things that I've spoken about quite a lot, because I don't think enough people are talking about it, I've never really heard anybody talk about it, which is we come from cultures that like to generalize. And I'm this person, I hate generalizations. If I can, kind of get out of the generalization mode, then I do. I mean, in some ways you have to, but
Right.
mostly, right? It's like I realize that the easiest thing in terms of health to generalize is your emotions. So we say, well, I'm feeling rejection. And when you say to the person, where, or I'm afraid, or I'm rejected, and we often connect our sense of deepest, truest selves to the emotion, but as a whole, I'm depressed, I am this, I'm that. We say that in our culture, in our language. And what I found was that people actually created more health issues by doing that, as opposed to if they said, if we broke it down and I said, well, where do you feel rejection in your body? Because that tells me a story. So if they say, well, I don't know, maybe I feel it in several places. Okay, where do you feel it the most? I want you to connect to your body. I want you to befriend your body. I want you to start to communicate with it. So where do you feel it the most? And they might go, okay, well, I feel it the most in my stomach. Okay, well, what I realized that the rejection that somebody feels in their stomach is not the same as if they said, well, I feel it in my head, or I feel it in my heart, or I feel it, in my back. Because if you have rejection in the stomach, there is a whole, if you start, and I think I can talk about this on your show, if we look at the chakras, and we combine them with parts of the body, which is essentially, kind of the language of your subtle bodies. So if we can combine that and we can say, well, okay, so we have a solar plexus chakra connected to your digestive system, and that solar plexus chakra is all to do with, your sense of self. What do you believe about yourself? What is it that you truly and deeply believe about yourself? Now, this chakra, from my lots of exploration, is also connected to a time period. And the time period that it's particularly connected to in terms of its own development is 14 to 21. So our teenage years, because that's also the time where we started saying, well, who am I? My daughter said to me, she's like, I'm not you. At 17, she said that to me. And I said to her, I'm really glad, because I actually don't want you to be me. I want you to be you.
Right.
And she said,
Cute.
but I don't know who I am yet. And I was like, yeah, well, that's a question that most people ask at all different time periods. At 17, you're good. This is a good time to ask.
Right? Oh,
And
wow.
and so when we have so in our solar plexus, we're kind of, we have that time period where we were like, well, who am I? And who do I want to be? And what do I want to do? And does the universe support me in that? Does the world support me? Do my teachers support me? Do my parents? Who am I? And like, what do I want to kind of express and create? And at the same time, as we get older, unless we actually look at that area and we say, hold on a sec, when I was, 14 to 21, maybe my sense of self, my confidence, my self-esteem, all of that, the way it was developed wasn't healthy. But we don't
Hmm.
know the age, most of us, as we're growing up. We're just like, oh my God, either I feel more confident as I get older, or I start collapsing and becoming more victim like. And so I realized, so we have this teenage self as a, if we expand a bit more, and I teach a lot about archetypes, which
Right.
to me are kind of like parts of our soul, parts of a personality in our soul. So then we would see we have two very particular archetypes operating in our digestive system. One is the, teenage self, and the other one is the victim versus victorious self. So we either go, you know what, I can do this, I've been supported, I've been loved, I'm going to be victorious, or we go, I don't have self-confidence, I'm not good enough, and this whole not good enough storyline comes out. And potentially I meet people in their 40s, 50s, 70s who believe that they're not good enough from here. Because again, coming back, they were rejected.
Hmm.
They were rejected by their teachers. They were rejected by different people, who mattered to them during that time.
Hmm.
And they don't necessarily have a memory of that time. They don't, they're like, well, I don't know, unless we start to kind of dig and uncover it. And so that rejection is very specific, and we need to work on it to change that part of ourselves by, through processes of meeting and becoming aware of it. But if I come back to the throat, if I have rejection in my throat, that can be very much based on communication, or I have a friend and she has a tumor, but it's benign. And it was really, really interesting because we were looking at it and it's in her spine. But the more I was exploring it, I was like, well, it's really interesting because the throat area starts to really develop in terms of the chakras around the age of 21 to 34. So 28, 28, not 21, 28 to 35, actually. Yeah, something like that. And she said to me, so I said to her, like, what happened in terms of, because there is a rejection aspect there. And it was like she had been hiding in some ways who she was for a long period of time, and who she wanted to have relationships with, and so on and so forth. And she said at 28, she made a decision to be in a relationship with a particular person that her family wouldn't approve of, but she never told them.
Hmm.
So she'd still pretend that they were friends instead of partners. And, and so, of course, that is a different type of rejection, right? Because I can't be myself. That's my voice. I can't use my voice. I have to pretend. And so, what I want people to really start to understand is that we need the easiest way to heal, and I think we all want an easier way to heal, is to become detailed and to actually know which is the part that we need to work on. Because, actually, if you think that you've got to work on all of you, your inner self, your mind is going to go, oh, I don't know where to start. I'm so scared. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know. And you're going to procrastinate. You're just going to do nothing a lot of the time, or you're going to run to every other person. And I think you should, like it's really helpful to go to other people, one-on-one practitioners, to go to courses. But you need to, ideally you go to courses that teach you how you can do it yourself, and then you go to other people as, as extra help, as opposed to all the help, and
Right.
then you do nothing, right? So we need to kind of change the whole way we're doing this.
Right. When you speak inner child, and I think the way I look at things now in my life, when there's something wrong, or no, it's not wrong, when there's a dis-ease caused by trauma, or being married to a narcissist, like why you chose that, like where that came into your life for a reason, and where that inner child had to, you know, heal through all that. So will you explain how that works and how you do heal your dis-ease through that inner child work?
Well, I think it's all the archetypes, but the inner child, in terms of what you mentioned, is so vital, because that's your foundation, and it actually goes from the womb up to the age of 21, at least, sometimes 26, depends on, you how you want to look at it. So it is a huge part of you, and you actually repeat 7-year cycles constantly. um and so for me personally, with the narcissist, I, you know, this is something we talk about a lot with my daughter, who's 22 at this now. And it was like, because I met my first husband when I was 18, and you don't know a lot when you're 18. And because I got pregnant so early, and then within 9 months, I actually ended up having my son, and then my daughter 2 years later, I kind of, in terms of the developmental stages of your, from 18 to kind of 28, where you're getting to know yourself, exploring yourself, I became a mom, but I also had this massive loss. And I also had to kind of, my husband at the time, I think, he came from a family who didn't support him in terms of guiding him. His mum left when he was really young. So he was a little bit lost in what does he do in his life. And so it was very easy when I discovered my healing ability, and that I was going to now help people do healing. We kind of went from, we were doing things together with writing, to him being my support system for, in terms of healing and the children, because someone had to be there to look after them. They were pretty little at the time, of me starting to develop what I'm doing. And that was a lot of pressure. Like, that felt like extreme pressure for me. And so then when I would go, I would travel a lot from when I was about 26, and I would go away, and it felt like, oh my God, oh, now I'm like young again, in a sense. I'm free,
Free.
even though
That's
I
what
was young.
the word
I
free
didn't
came.
feel young,
Yeah.
right? I didn't feel young. And so that stage of development where you're getting kind of to know yourself, I was just like, I'm a mom as well as, provider here.
Right.
And so that, eventually that often creates, and especially when you meet someone at 18, you don't know who you are. And then you get to know yourself, and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel like the right fit necessarily. But now I have 2 children and a business where I'm traveling around the world. How, like, what do I do? And so in some ways, I was praying and going, I know that I'm meant to be with this person, but that I don't feel like he's that love of my life that I also want, which
Hmm.
is, comes back to that feminine. So I really felt like the masculine part of me was getting really satisfied through travel, through, having a very, very successful book for, especially for somebody in Australia. I mean, there's very few people who sell over 1 million books in Australia. Like, as big as the country is, we only have 26 or 27 million people, so
Oh,
it, it's
wow.
like, yeah, it's tiny compared to, I think you guys have over 300 million in America. So, not even 10% is here. So it's challenging, and you have to you really got to focus your energy, and and you got to be doing a lot of traveling. And so, so my first husband and I, we kind of fell apart. And then, like a lot of people, I would read these romantic books, and I would watch movies, and I was like, soulmate, oh my God, I want a soulmate. And I met, what I would say, my people from my soul family, without a doubt, as I was traveling. But it was like, oh, but this one's married, or this one's gay, or this one's this, you know, like, do I get a soulmate who is, free and that could meet me? And when I met my ex-husband, who was the narcissist, he actually interviewed me for a TV show. That's how it started.
Oh, funny.
And he was extraordinarily charismatic as a person. And he was, as narcissists do, he heard my, love story ideal, of how I had met these people, but I hadn't actually experienced that soulmate love like I was wanting and needing from my heart, because I was like, well, my feminine's just not getting nourished in that way. I need love. And he played that role to the extreme. And I had no idea that narcissist existed at the time. Nobody talked about it.
Right.
It was just, I mean, to a point where he actually told me, oh, he was an actor, and he was saying, I've been trying to write a script about myself being a psychopath who learns how to love. And because he told me his victim story so well, I was like, oh my God, you're not psychopath. You're just a person who's been traumatized. And here I am. I can help you with trauma, right? I can support you. I can love you like nobody's loved you before. And so I had all of these things. Plus, the fact for me was that I really felt at 23, I had to give up acting, because I couldn't be a mom, a business, build my business, keep learning and doing everything on to the scale I wanted, and do acting, because I want to be good at that too. Right?
Right.
It's like, it's huge. And so I had to give it up. And there was a part of me, speaking of the inner child, the teenage part, that was like, oh my God, but that made me breathe. That is my like life force, and I have to give this up. I feel like dying, right? So I was very dramatic when I was younger. And so all of a sudden, in my early 30s, this man comes, and he's so charismatic and so kind of vibrant. And I'm like, wow, how could you not kind of fall in love with him? And he's giving me my fantasy. I remember
Huh.
I kept saying, like, every time when we're walking around wherever it was, I remember he came to Paris at one point. I was like, is there a camera around? Because it feels like when I'm with you, it feels like there's a camera somewhere. And
Oh,
so, I just really didn't understand that to the degree that I should have. I also think to be honest, I also think we had karma together. We had some pretty deep karma to work through. And I think I heard you talk about past lives. Then I had to kind of explore afterwards to
right.
understand. But the thing that he did that really got me, and then helped me to understand later, why you have to do inner child work after this type of relationship, or ideally before, so you don't actually bring it into your life. But um, he heard about how much I struggled coming to Australia, not being able to speak English and so on, and being bullied. And one of the first things he did, which I thought was so amazing and so creative, was that he wrote a letter from his inner child to my inner child. And he also sent a photo of his inner child kind of connecting to mine. And it was this very, profound letter. And as I read it, and he wrote it by hand, as I read it, I remember I could feel the child in me going, oh my God, that's the friend I never had. That's the love I've never had. It's him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because narcissists know how to
Mm-hmm.
get to you where you're at. And so I literally felt like that part of me that at that time I hadn't worked on in the way that I later understood, because I did, again, I work with the inner child as generalization as opposed to timelines, right?
Right.
So developmental stages, I'm going to say. So, to me, it was like, well, the inner child is whatever, age. It's not necessarily that we need to go through from the womb up till 21 at least, and see what happened. And yeah, he fully connected, and I literally felt like, he had that part of me, he had my inner child intertwined within him. And it was very interesting because I'm a very energetic person. I have a lot of energy and vitality usually. And after, we were together for a few months, I couldn't move. I couldn't. And I remember thinking, it's so interesting that my will is so strong. And the will center, when we kind of explore it, is actually your sacral and root chakras. And that we also have our inner children there, as well as other archetypes. And I remember thinking, it's almost like I can't get out of bed. I can't move. And there was a 3 months period where I literally couldn't. Later on, I realized that narcissists, they are parasitical. So they actually feed off you and pull whatever energy, you have into themselves. And on top of that, they take on your character. And so when I met him, I was like, oh, he doesn't seem like the most intelligent person I've ever met. And I do need intelligence to be around. But within months, it was like he was reflecting me to
Oh,
myself.
wow.
And it
Wow.
was just incredible, you
Jeez.
know.
When you said, okay, so let's talk about your book, The Secret Language of Your Body. When you said, you've sold 1 million copies, to me, like in Australia, do they, because, I grew up with Louise Hay, right? So I knew I was like I would give everybody how to, the books from her and the cards and everything. And but it was very rare, like in my late 20s, early 30s, it was like, who's Louise Hay? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's this, and that's really how I raised my daughters and believe in that. But when I think of your book and what you do, and if you say it just like caught what like wildfire in Australia, are people more open to that? Like where does that come from? And we need to get to your book. We've gone like I don't want to end it yet because we haven't even gotten to the all the magic that you do.
Well, when I say Australia, I meant being from Australia.
Right.
Because the book is in 27 languages. So, just
Okay, got
to
it.
put that. But it has done incredibly, incredibly well in Australia. So people are definitely, I think, very, very open-minded here in terms of my experience in different countries. I would I wouldn't say necessarily that everyone is, because we have a lot of people who are not.
Hmm.
But I think for me, what I found was that all the practitioners of different modalities, in particular, anything from healing to kinesiology to chiropractors to people who were into reflexology, kind of any type of thing like that. A lot of them, kind of had my book, like you said. They had Louise Hay's, and obviously Louise Hay in lots of ways opened the doors. I mean, she wrote the book. I think the book came out, was it in the 70s still? Or she was exploring it. It was, I think, came out before I was born. And it was I kind of think also because she created her publishing company, and she had all the people who were exposing us to new type of possibilities. her book became huge from
Hmm.
that. And I think for me, and I'm this person, I don't want to write something that's already there. So for me, when when I was looking at Louise's book, which of course was, it was there, I saw it as, a foundation to to grow from.
Yes, and I see
Because
that in you for sure.
yeah, because I kind of felt like I I felt like she gave us the beginnings of something, so a lot of, if you look at her, obviously her book that became so famous, sort of something, how to heal your life,
Yes.
most of it is actually starting to connect to self-love and understand yourself, and then you have a tiny section on diseases and so on that I feel again like opened the door. But for me the challenge was this, that I was seeing clients, and I firstly needed processes. And by the I don't think you really get that, because I've heard some of the people on your podcast that we evolve, right? And things that may have worked super well in the 70s, like when our mind was open to that in that way, or even early 80s, maybe even 90s, where kind of like we could work with an affirmation. I really believe that at that time. But by the time I was, starting to teach people, we needed to go deeper. We needed to actually go into the exploration of, let's use all of us. That was my thought. How
Hmm.
do we use, because people started to go, well, I am, like I was saying, I'm visual, but I'm kinesthetic, but I hear things, but I feel things. And you know for me it was like, I don't want an approach that is too generalized and works, and where I think, because that's medicine to me, and
Right.
I'm going to assume works for everyone. So when I decided to write the book, it was actually based on a few things. One was that I'm very direct and at times confrontational with people, and not everybody can handle that. And so when people would come to me, if I at times, and sometimes they were health practitioners, I'm going to say, I would tune into them, right? And I would say, for instance, well, you have hip problems. And they would go, I remember this one lady, she was a Chinese medicine practitioner, and she was like, no, I don't. And I was like, okay, well, either I'm really wrong, or obviously I didn't say this, or you're not being honest. And or maybe I'm just being too direct with you. And then she called me a week later, and I must have been 23 at the time or something, like 24.
Wow.
She called me a week later and she said, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said to you that I don't have hip problems. I actually do. But it was very confrontational because, hip issues, they were connected to her father, and she had this painful relationship with him. And so I was like, I wonder if I wrote about it and I read like to people like her, who are more sensitive and more newer to this type of work, even though she was doing acupuncture and Chinese medicine. Maybe if I could read something to them, it wouldn't be as confrontational. So that's how my mind was working. And I kind of felt like, again, Louise was such a door opener, but I needed more. Like I was literally seeing people, and it was like, with her work, most of it, there's a couple of lines or one line. And I felt like, maybe in my own exploration, and I didn't really use Louise's book when I was really exploring, because I didn't want to be influenced by
Hmm.
anybody. I really wanted to be influenced by what I was seeing with people, and and thousands of people, and the logic behind it. I kind of really felt like I wanted to come from new perspectives and new eyes. And I also, knew that, as incredible as the work was from her, she didn't have the same ability as me. And I kind of
No,
went,
that's what I was gonna say. Like you come with all this knowledge, intuition, and the abilities that you have, and she didn't have that. And I didn't mean to
yeah,
compare you to her, but it was more like me. I understand, but your book and who you are, goes exactly what we're doing, evolving, like we're
Yeah,
completely, our bodies are even evolving into this new, all our DNA.
totally.
I mean, I could go into the codes and all that thing, but
Yeah.
when you go into when you have a client like the Chinese medicine, like, and you saw the hip,
Yeah.
where is it just coming to you? Will you explain how, because I've heard you in interviews where you're telling a story about, I saw the cancer and the diagnosis, and that they were like, no, the doctor said no, that, and you already
Mhm.
saw it. Then like a week later, your
Yeah.
truth came through. So will you
Yeah.
explain how you do that?
Yeah, so the liver bit happened once. I never saw something like a cartoon looking thing again afterwards. But what I did see, I would the way I would do, and I still would, if I still do it if I'm helping somebody, is I'll focus on that person, and my question is, where do we start? Like, show me. And so it's like the best way I can explain this, and we can go on and on about this, is that I connect to their soul and their kind of their guardian angel, because I
Okay.
really believe that their angel holds threads of their destiny. And I have developed a really deep relationship with mine. And so I kind of, and spend a lot of time understanding these higher beings as well. And so I connect to both and I go, show me, where do I need to start? Like, give me a starting point. And from there, I'm going to create a map for this person for understanding what actually goes on inside of their body. And I would say, but what is the most important starting point? That's where I want to know. That's where, take me there. And it's often not what people think at all. It'll
Huh.
be something where they go, I don't know. I don't know that I have this. And it's like, well, you do. Um, and I'll just write it down. If they say no, I don't. I've done this for so long, I don't pay attention to what they say, because I'm like, well, you can suppress it very deeply. And I said, and I usually say, we'll come back to it, and you'll start to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. And so I'll start from that point. And the way it might look to me is either there's a dark energy around that organ, or there is a circle around that part of their body. And I'm literally kind of going, I'm scanning it, but I want to know their story. And this is a difference between, like, now we have so much technology and you can, get all these insights, but you can never get the insights that a human being can give you from, from AI, from technology. Again, not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying that, when I would see it, I would then go, I want to know your story. I want to know what's going on for you. And from there, I'm going to link it to the next part of the body. So I will actually say, okay, which now take me, I'll ask them questions. And sometimes I'll ask questions that I know answers to, or most of the time I will. But I don't want to tell somebody, because I learned that the hard way, that that's not how to do it. I'll ask questions because I actually want their consciousness to become aware of it. And the more they are aware of it, the clearer it actually becomes for me. So then from that spot, wherever we start, I'll go, take me to the next one. And the body, soul, angel experience will literally take me to the next part of the body. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And I can tell them the storyline usually of their life, of what
Wow.
was going on there, because I know the wisdom of the body now and how it shows up and what each part means. And also, where we need to work with that part to, and be specific to transform it. Where do we need to start? And I think when I was talking, like, about my, understanding communication and throat, the third eye, the heart, what I'm trying to do is to go, who is this person and how do I share this with them? Where do I, what can they handle? What is my storyline going to be like in sharing it in the most clearest but also gentle way? Because people are scared when they come, to me. Usually they're like, what are you going to tell me? I'm so
Right.
scared. Not all, but many. or the nervous, and I just want to, I want to help people to, one, understand that every disease that you have in your body has is connected to your life experience. And if you can work with it, then you can change your thinking, your feeling, and what you're doing, right? It has to be the three. And this is what I learned a lot from, from writing my book and from having people do the processes. I mean, I've got thousands and thousands of testimonials from people who've never met me, who've used the book and who would say to me, like recently I got a video testimonial from this lady who, I think she had breast cancer, and she was this, big businesswoman before that. And the book came to her like it often does to different people, just randomly, or
Mm-hmm.
they think so.
Right.
and and she said it was like it opened her mind to exactly what she needed to work on because of the specificity in the book and her connecting to it. Because at the beginning of the book, I actually say to people, this is how you tune in. Please do this exercise first before you get to, all the meanings. And then from there, you can start to explore and work on yourself. And she said to me, oh my God, I wouldn't be here had
Wow.
I not had this book. And so many people have said that to me. And it is very humbling. It is, because without our health, that's the only thing we end up focusing on, and we can't really live a full life. And I understood that in my own experience of pain very early on, and
Right.
then we can explore spirituality and emotions and co-creation and everything else. But when you're in pain, you just want to be out of pain.
Right. Gosh, I could go on with you for an episode number two, so easily and more because there's so much depth to your work and there's so much, I mean, I always say the word magic, but it's like I'm sure you've had so many past lives as a healer, right? Have you done all that work?
Yeah, I definitely have had quite a few there. And, and again, I think that when we truly, understand ourselves, we start to see that healing has every aspect of your life involved. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I know I'm trying to rush through some things
No,
because
don't rush.
there's so much. There's so
Right.
much that's connected to healing. Like I know you had people talking about destiny, for instance, on your show and purpose. And I literally just a couple of weeks finished teaching a workshop on it in relation to really understanding ourselves, from the, how do we co-create our reality? Where does it come from? What is our soul? And then how do we actually, how do we get blocked from childhood? And particular root chakra, sacral chakra, then how do we require to understand the left and the right sides of the body, which is your feminine and your masculine. And without a creative feminine, we say, I don't know what I want to do. I'm not sure. I just don't know, because so many of us shut down the feminine. And from a strong masculine that has a, I hate this saying, and hate is a strong word, but I don't dislike the saying of people's when people go, develop thick skin. I mean, for somebody like myself who had psoriasis and was able to release it, thankfully, in my life, anything to do with thickening or, your
Right.
skin is not something I want to create. And having a thick skin is not necessarily a healthy thing, but having a strong, flexible spine is what I think people really mean.
Mm-hmm.
Having that spine where you go, okay, people say negative things to you or attack you, and you're not affected by it. But at the same time, you know your purpose from that creative, flowing feminine that you have. And then you have the masculine that goes, okay, I have clarity and I'm going to make things happen. and I'm going to go into, like, this is how it's going to happen. And one of the biggest reasons that people don't is because of these weakened parts of themselves in terms of action meets procrastinator archetype that connects to various parts of us. And when we've been rejected, hurt, and so on, we feed that because it's easy. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I can't because blah, blah, blah. And I can't because of this. And I can't because of that. And so I really started to break this down for people. And they were like, oh my God, healing is in every part of your life, right? It's in relationships, it's in building your destiny empire business, whatever you want to call it, right? Your magic in that sense. It's in being a mother or a father. When my daughter was 17 and we haven't had massive amounts of clashes in our lives, but 17 was the clashing period that we had. And at that time I had just met my partner who I'm with, and I said to him, oh my God, she's just a nightmare at the moment, and I've never experienced that with her before in this way. And it occurred to me as we were discussing, I was like, well, maybe something around my own 17-year-old self that she's
Oh,
clashing with, that
yes.
let me come back to that. Let me work on that so that I'm understanding her, that her and I are connecting, that something she's fighting against. And, her and I have this incredible relationship, like what you would wish for mother and daughter to have. And she said to me many a time, she's like, Mom, I didn't really rebel against you because even if I wanted to, you'd just be so like, you'd hold the space for it and you'd be so understanding and you'd go, well, I trust you, you have wisdom, act with wisdom. And she's like, well, you said I had to act with wisdom. So I was like,
Oh,
Mom, trust me, I'm going to have to act with wisdom. And,
exactly. I love it.
and so when we use the word healing, it's just like everything. I have a book that I wrote a couple of years ago on understanding, it's called Understanding Modern Spirituality, because I was like, how do we create more of a foundational spirituality by asking deep, deep questions? Because we have so much, as I was saying to you when we were chatting, it's like, I actually, and I say this to people, I do not want you to believe me, because I'm not looking for that. What I want is for you to think for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I want to inspire you to start to really think for yourself and to think deeper than you've ever thought. So, for instance, we mentioned past lives, which I had a lot of a dive into, especially with the narcissistic relationship, because I just couldn't. I needed to understand why. Why did I choose this person? What was it about? But I also ask people to think about their future lives. What are you doing to create your future life, which very few people talk about?
Mm-hmm. I love
Because
that.
we
Yes.
we have that tendency. So I'm very big on asking questions around things that people don't ask as many questions, or you have questions around where people, and I'm sure you've had something like that, that go, Jesus heals. And it's like, well, who says that I don't work with Jesus Christ? And because I do actually, but I've show me in the Bible where he says, do nothing and I'll do it all for you, because I haven't
Exactly.
found that part.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, but I found lots of parts where it's help yourself and I will help you. If, but I haven't found like do nothing and you know, and so again, it's like I want people to stretch, to think, to ask questions as opposed to, be stuck. In the Bible, it talks about previous lifetimes, but it's just that people don't, if they cannot see that or they don't believe that, they can't find it.
Yeah.
They can't find that, the part where there's a whole thing about John the Baptist being Elijah. It says it so clearly, in the
Mhm.
Bible that he had been the prophet Elijah. And it's like, well, we just ignore anything that we don't want to believe in, you
Right.
know. But I'm that person that doesn't stop asking questions. That's why, in the last year, 2 years, I bought, I don't know, like 250 books, and my my kids come in and they're like, and they're very complex books. Like they're not books that most people just read. It's like
Like what?
almost
Give me something.
so they're very mystical. So it's like they're very much about the hidden truth,
Okay.
right? And written in ways that, from 100 years ago that are very difficult to read. And like, you've got to concentrate. And most people say to me, I have a headache when I start this. And I'm like, well, it stretches you and you're here to grow. And that's what I'm all about. And yeah, so my kids are like, well, when are you going to read this? Is this going to take a few lifetimes? And I'm like, it might, but the fact that I have access to them, and every week I'm like, I'm really curious about this situation. I wonder if I have a book about this. And I'll go to my library and I'm like, hey, I think this one has, let me open and read this part. Ah, hey, that makes sense. Let me sit with it and digest it and think about it. And so, I spent a lot of time studying. I don't stop studying. I'm always listening to podcasts, or people's, different perspectives. My new thing is that I can now listen to perspectives that are completely opposite to mine, especially in politics, and not get upset. I'm honestly,
That's
because
amazing, right? I can too. And it's been a recent one for me because I kind of don't even watch the news. I mean, I don't watch the news, or I'm not involved at all. But I can just live life and think I'm living my life and it's pretty darn good.
well, exactly. But I just like, because for many, many years, I could not listen to opposing points of view. I'd have
Oh,
to
funny.
argue and get into it and, explain my perspective. So this is my new thing of, literally going, okay, this person is interviewing someone, and I'm like, oh my God. And I really listen to it. And sometimes my partner, he's like, why do you listen to his stuff? And I was like, because I am actually working on my spiritual, aspect of, I'm discerning, but I'm not reacting to this.
Right. I love it. Yeah.
you know.
Oh my gosh.
So again, when I say healing is just everything, every
It
part of it.
is. And you've opened my eyes even more with this hour with you. And I feel like you need to be broadcasted around, like you need to go big. Like you're not big enough because I look at you and what you're teaching is what should be in the schools. And I say that to a lot of people that I interview because I feel like what I'm learning now is like, gosh, if I knew this when I was in high school or, growing up in middle school, I mean, the earlier the better. Think of what our lives would be like. But I do feel like it's coming. I feel like the future is getting there. Do you see that?
I feel like there's so many more people than when I started. Oh my God, it was the woo woo,
Right.
And now we've got so many more people that are open minded to try to explore. And like, I have to say, I don't usually talk about that I connect to the angel in podcasts, but I just feel like you've got the right audience for
Oh,
that.
for sure. Oh my gosh, I do too. I write letters to my angels and talk to them all the time. We have a full-on relationship. Yes, and
Well,
everyone
and
listening does too.
exactly, and that is so so vitally important. And one day I hopefully can do more in terms of a podcast, because I spend so much time also learning about the angels, the archangels, the archai, the exousia, and like all of the different kind of beings here. And I do talk about it in my book, Understanding Modern Spirituality, and what they do on levels, that was hidden from us, that we don't necessarily know, that come from more of that esoteric teachings. Funny enough, when I met my partner now, one of my first questions was, and I don't think I've ever shared this before. I said to him, so what do you think of esoteric Christianity? I'm just curious.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he was like, quick, quick, this is a test. She's come up with something intelligent.
Oh, cute.
Because at that time I was like, I need intelligence. I don't care if you don't know the answer to this. It's not that I expected him to know. I was like, but I expect an intelligent answer from a person if I am considering to be in a relationship with you. And so I just think there's so much that's been hidden from us, and that has been incredibly, incredibly fascinating for me.
Mm.
The details of the hidden mysteries,
Yes,
you
I'm
know.
so into that. I'm so into that. So into that. Like I would go to your bookshelf and probably be so in heaven.
You probably would. I have, every topic that you can, I guess, think about that somebody can ask about. I'm like, I have it there, from the depth of mystery where you're like, oh, and I'm so grateful, that I because you need concentration actually to read those books. You need patience and you need concentration. You need to decipher,
Right. Have you read this
because
Disappearance of the Universe?
I think I might have at some point.
My Chinese medicine doctor, he's not Chinese, but he always says, if you read The Disappearance of the Universe, Ashley, everything in your life will change. So I'm thinking, I bet that book's in your, and I haven't read it, but it's in I have it, but it is one of those books where you have to really sit and concentrate. But it's, that kind of, I can see your shelves like his, because every book that he brings up to me, I'm like, oh my gosh. He's like, I read that 3 times. I'm like, how do you read that 3 times? But I can just see, yeah, I mean, anyway, okay. Yes. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that, and if I can, because we've kind of opened up so many doors and threads, and I see my life so far in three different parts, three timelines, in the sense where the first part was healing myself and getting to know and discovering healing, and having small children and so on. And the second part was actually meeting the narcissistic person. But at the same time, somebody said to me, what were the real deep lessons from that? And it was like, I had to connect with him to open the door to deepening my soul.
Yes.
Because together with him, that's when I started learning about the esoteric, the deeper, the aspect of everything, how our universe was made, who was the Christ being as well. Is Jesus and Christ the same being? Interesting question. You
Mm-hmm.
know, understanding who I was, where my own kind of spirituality, while I was born in Eastern Europe, what at some point I think everybody needs to delve into what that was about for them. You know, why did my soul come there? Why did I end up in Australia? We were on our way to America. We were going to Chicago from Italy, and we were kind of stopped and we ended up in Australia. The destiny aspect of it, I learned so much during that relationship. And then I learned about narcissism. Like, again, I go into everything very deeply, and I learned how to recover from it, and took years, I'm going to say. And I learned what to do, that most people don't know what to do, and why they can get stuck in that trauma for a long, long period of time. So I kind of take, that was my third part is reclaiming of self, and using, like, everything I've learned I teach now, and I put it all together into, I guess, teaching that has so many layers and so much depth, that makes me feel alive and so inspired, on a daily basis.
Everything you say, Anna, Anna. So everyone can, I mean, I really think we should probably do a part 2, because I know that now that we're going to these hidden truths, I'm like, there's so many things now besides your amazing power of healing that we could go into, that I would love to talk about. But tell everybody how to find you. You have a free masterclass on your website that I think would be amazing for people to watch. Get the books.
Yeah. So I really encourage people to go to my website, which is innasegal.com, INNASEGAL.com, and go straight to the masterclass. I think, go deeper because, we've touched on a lot of things, but the masterclass is 4 hours. So, and has processes because I want people to start to feel and experience what we're talking about. And so it's basically innasegal.com / masterclass. And you also see there's many masterclasses because I talk about many, many topics. But, maybe start with this one, especially people on this podcast, and, explore timelines from the perspective of your health first and what is possible, and then go look at my other ones. But yeah, it's exciting, and yeah, I think if people don't have the secret language of your body, it's probably a great book to have just to, when you're feeling something, it guides you to more specificity, especially if you heard this podcast on what to look for. If you're interested in more of the mystical stuff, I put quite a bit into understanding modern spirituality, and it'll stretch your mind in what questions maybe you've never asked yourself and what is possible to ask, because I've gone down many, many different rabbit holes with this. Um, and
Let's do a
yeah,
podcast on that book.
let's
Oh,
do
I'm
that.
going to
That
read
would
it.
be
Is
really
it on Audible or just a book?
it's just a book, but yeah, I can probably send you the online version, or
But let's do that.
yeah.
Oh, I'm excited. It's calling me.
Yeah.
I'm
There'll
so
be some really
excited.
good questions from
Yes,
there
I love
because
it. I know. I can't wait. Oh, Inna, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're my new soul sister. Like I started off, and I don't mean it like, oh my gosh, I was so looking forward to it. Yeah, and I told you that before we hit record. Like the only reason why I ever do podcasts these days, or if they're like full, I'm all in, and I was all in, or wouldn't be doing this. But when I'm middle through this thing, I go, oh my gosh, everyone's going to be crazy for her that Tuesday that this goes out. They're going to be calling me, texting me. You're just like this. There's so much to you, but you are like truly living your purpose. That's for sure. You're truly living, you found it in this lifetime and what you're going to do, like thinking of your future lives, like think of those lives. And they're going on now, right?
Well, yeah, I think about that quite often. I'm like, what seeds am I putting in for this? What am I? And I think those thoughts are so important for us to have if we are in that state of exploration. What's possible? What can we do? I definitely think about this constantly. How much richness can I live here? Before I go into, that the spiritual world. And, that's been another theme for me. I really, really spent a lot of time understanding all the steps that happen in the spiritual world and where we go and how we go there. And it's just like wild, amazing, amazing to understand it from a detailed overview, because we hear it a lot from people like who have near death experiences and
Right.
people who've done hypnotherapy and so on. But I'm that person that reads all that and then goes, okay, and I want to go deeper. And what else? What else?
Wow.
What don't we know? And then that's part of my bookshelf as well. And kind of sitting there for hours and hours a day going, oh my God, let me sit with that. Let me digest this. How can I share this in a language that people can understand?
Right.
Because, that's not necessarily the
No,
easiest
it
stuff
isn't the
to,
easiest stuff, but it's getting easier. People, it's coming. I feel
because
it. I
people are
see it.
stretching. We're stretching our
Yes,
minds.
we
We're
are.
going, I want to know. I'm curious.
Yep, I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you. Have a
Thank
beautiful
you.
day in Australia, and I'll finish my evening here. You're already on Saturday, right? You're in Saturday and I'm
Yes,
on
we have,
Friday.
it's our weekend.
I love it.
Thank
Well,
you so
thank
much.
you.
And
Thank
I
you.
look forward to more, deeper,
Yes, me
interesting
too. I can't wait for sure.
exploring.